Hey guys, drdecks here. Today we are working on some Regal Ideas pool wall fences and gates. So if you like what you see, don't forget to click that subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Like what we're doing, we really appreciate it. All right, let me show you what we're doing. So the first thing we want to talk about are these pool wall posts that we're installing. And those went in the other day. We hand dug and poured concrete, and then we leveled all these out to the same height. So that's how we're gonna justify height for the gate and for the side sections of the railing. All right, so now that the posts are installed, they're to the right height, I don't have to cut them down or anything like that. I have to mount some brackets onto the posts that'll accept the top and bottom rails. I have to mount those to the inside of each panel. So there's a 6-foot panel over here, a 3-foot gate, and then a 3-foot panel on this side as well. So I already have my measurements. I have to come down 1/2 inch and down 56 3/8. That allows me to put the brackets at the right height so that I can put my top rails and my bottom rails in. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. All right, so I've marked all of my locations of where I need to put all the brackets. Now I'm gonna go ahead and install all the brackets to all the sides of the posts. One thing I wanted to mention is these posts are sticking about anywhere from 5.5 to 6 feet out of the ground. This one's almost full 6 feet. Pretty sturdy for a picket fence of that height. So pretty happy with the way we ended up using a little bit more concrete than I thought we would, but that's just because we dug the holes a little too big. So that happens, but something fairly sturdy that's gonna last a very long time. I'm looking forward to and getting these installed. So because we don't have a flat surface to install our posts on, we had to order our posts blank without any brackets installed. Actually, Regal makes corner, line, and end brackets that you can mount to a solid surface, and then we wouldn't have to be mounting all these brackets, but because we're doing a fence style in the ground, in the dirt, we have to mount all of our brackets by ourselves. So that's what we're doing right now. We're taking a top and bottom post bracket. It's a PB-BL because it's black. That's what the BL stands for. So it's a post bracket, black. And there's a top and a bottom in each packet, and then you have to have some screws to go along with that. You order those separately. So you order these as one part and then the screws as another part. So I'm just gonna prep all the boxes and get all these open, and then we'll start mounting them. So I have my first bracket. It's a 1/2 inch down. I have to line it up to the side of the post, and then carefully start my hole. The thing with impact drivers, you gotta go slow. Don't ratchet these things in, just take it easy. You can see how it's a little loose. So usually what I do is I go in with my screws, and then I'll go back and tighten them with a screwdriver, because I don't wanna overdrive these and strip them out. You can always tighten them up by hand a lot easier than you can with one of these. This top one gets 3 screws and the bottom one gets 2. Here's my screwdriver. I know this one's a little loose. So it's a number 2 square drive. There we go. All right, that one's in. Time for the bottom. So that's one side. I got to do the other side and 2 more after that, and then we can start cutting our rails in. All right, so now I have the brackets mounted to my posts. I can cut the top and bottom rails, but before I do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and mount the gate up and see how that hangs and how it swings, and make sure that I don't need to adjust my sides in and out after the gate is hung. It's kind of important. If you hang all your side rails and you lock them in, then you're really committed to your opening of your gate. So always hang your gates first to make sure that you have the proper opening you want, because you can make small adjustments now, but once these rails are up, it's harder to make those adjustments. So we're gonna grab the gate, mount the hardware to that, bring it up here and install it. All right guys, so this is a 5-foot gate kit that Regal Ideas puts out to go with their 5-foot high pool privacy wall. It can be made up to 48 inches wide. We are around the 3-foot mark on ours. You can download the directions online from regalideas.com that shows you how to make the gates, how to assemble them and put them all together. Once they're all screwed together, they're pretty solid. So one side has a welded end, and the other side you install into pre-welded brackets that are mounted to the post, okay? This is gonna be your hinge side, the side with the welded brackets to it. The other side is the cut down side, the receiving side, once you get everything put to the right size you want. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this sideways like this. I'm gonna mount my hinges. Now, your gate kit comes with hinges and a latch. I still recommend that you buy some extra screws in case you drop a couple, because they do come with screws, but they only come with so many. I would just recommend picking up an extra 50. Now on my other gates, I came down 3 inches from the top. So that's what I'm gonna do here, is come down 3 inches. I already know which side I want my hinges on. I already know the orientation of my gate. I already know the orientation of how I want it to swing. So here's the hinge. What's nice about the hinge, it has 4 places of attachment and not just 2 on the outside, but there's actually 2 that you can mount to the side of the post as well. So it gives it a little more rigidity. It'll last a little bit longer, takes a little more abuse when those gates are getting slammed from the wind or from kids or whatever, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, you notice that the hinge is a little offset. This side I use on the stationary post, and this side I use on the post that's gonna be swinging. So I'm gonna put this like so. Okay, I'm gonna grab a couple screws, and I usually put my hardware 3 inches down and 3 inches up. So I got my 3-inch down mark. And again, I'm not overbearing on these screws. I'll go back and tighten them up with my screwdriver so I know I'm not over driving them. Awesome. All right, here's my second hinge. This time I'm gonna go 3 inches up from the bottom of the gate. I just use a little pencil mark on there. Again, I'm putting the wider side on the actual gate, the part that's gonna be moving all the time. One thing I like about Regal screws is they tap very quick. I've used some other brands in the past. They don't tap nearly as fast. You're sitting there and you're just like, come on, baby, come on. These work really good. Just be gentle. Don't overdrive your screws. All right. So now I have the gate hardware mounted to the gate. Now I'm going to take the gate up and I'm going to start mounting it to the posts that I need to for it to hang. And then once we do that, we'll start measuring up for our side rails. Now our gate is ready to be installed. This is probably the trickiest part of the install. Sometimes it helps to have a second hand when you're doing this, but if you're rolling solo, you just got to be patient and get that one screw in there. So you got to put the gate at the height that you want it to match up with the rest of the fence. A little high is okay. There we go. Just to reiterate what I had just said, we mounted the gate, and this side of the gate is much lower than this post. So what I have to do is I have to adjust the top rail of that side of the fence and suck it over so that the gate will sit like this. Once I do that, then I'm gonna push this out to create the right reveal. So we might be pulling everything a little bit out of level, but at least it'll have a nice straight line to it, because I don't want to leave the gate sitting like that where it wants to actually bang up against this post. It won't do that once I attach it to the other side and I pull it back enough to where it creates some tension on it so that it doesn't want to sag. That's a quick tip. That's something that you got to look out for when you're doing this kind of work. And that's what we're gonna do next. So I put a towel in between the post and the gate just to kind of get me close to where I want it to be for height, and it won't scratch up the post. I could also use shims. I didn't have any, but I happen to have this towel here. So now what I've done is I've measured down below my distance that I need for my bottom rail, and then I verified at the top that I'm very similar as far as height at the top as well. So now I'm gonna go down and cut the top rails and the bottom rails for these two fence sections, and then we'll come up and get those mounted, and then I'll show you how I'm gonna make this permanent and so it doesn't sag. We have taken our cut hub down, so I am cutting on the grass instead of on a chop saw stand, in case you're wondering. Always wear your eye protection. Now normally when you're putting in your top rails, if you're on a deck or on a solid surface, you leave your fasteners loose so it makes the posts flexible, makes them move. Because these are in concrete, it's a little bit more of a challenge. So I cut a little bit extra off the end so I can squeeze them in. I'm still gonna flex the posts apart from one another, but normally you wouldn't have to do that if you have the ability to. So we'll see how this one goes in. It's a little bit shorter run, so it's gonna be a little bit tighter. There we go. But she fit just fine. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put some screws in this, and I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna raise the gate so that it looks good with this section of the rail. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a screw in this side first on the top. And I go from the side like so. This is sitting really well. It's about almost all the way in. There's a weld in here, so sometimes when there's a weld, they sit a little bit back. Okay, now I cut this top rail short. You can see there's a gap about 3/8 of an inch. That's so I can pull this post back, and when I did, my towel dropped. Okay, so I know I'm close to where I want to be for height. So I'm gonna pull this back almost completely tight. Now, the gate post is sitting higher than the fence, just by a little bit. But I kind of like it there. See, when I drop it, when I let go, it's too low. All I have to do is put one screw in this, one well-placed screw. And I'm actually gonna pull this gate back and double check it. Looks good. Still just a little bit low, but I think it's playable. Because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this post over as far as it'll go this way so I can equal out my gap here. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about maybe cutting this a little bit shorter, but I don't want to make it so that this gets too out of whack. So I'm going to take a measurement really quick and see where we're at top and bottom wise. 30 3/4, and I got 30 3/4 minus right there. So that's pretty close to being the right width. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and put some screws in it. Now that our top rails are installed, I'm going to put a couple screws in our bottom. Okay, so now we have our top and bottom rails set. Let's put the latch on the gate so it doesn't hyperextend anymore. And then we can put our pickets in and we'll be done. With every Regal Ideas gate kit, they include the hinges and a latch set. This is the release for the latch. So I'm gonna install this first, and then I'll install the latch, and then the gate will stay locked. Very important you don't overdrive these screws, okay? Now that our gate is good, and I like the way it's sitting, we have some little caps we'll put on top, and then we'll start putting in our pickets. One cool thing about Regal Ideas pickets is they have a grooved top and grooved bottom, that latch in. They lock into the top and the bottom rail. There's a little groove on the inside of the top rail and a little groove at the bottom rail that locks them together so they don't move so much, and it keeps the bottom rail from flexing. So all you do is you got to snap those in, top and bottom. You can kind of hear them snap. and then the top usually will go in. I like to run a few pickets whenever I can before I start putting in my picket spacers. There's a couple different ways to do this, but I'm trying to keep these out of the dirt, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a few in and give you guys the idea of how we're doing. So the way we figure out how many pickets you need is usually we start in the middle of the run. So normally I would figure out my distance is 61.5. So half of 61.5 is 30 3/4. So the center of the middle picket would be at 30 3/4. Okay, so I'm just gonna say, here's one that's close. Okay, so that's pretty close. I'm gonna go ahead and put a picket spacer on each side of that, top and bottom. Okay. Then I'm going to space it out about where I want it. Usually a mallet really helps, which I have one right here. A mallet can really help you get your layout dialed in. There's 30 3/4. So I'm about 30 3/8 to the inside edge of my picket. And I'm within a 1/16 on the other side, so I'm gonna say that's good. All right, check the bottom. Very close. 30 3/8. Okay, now it's just adding pickets and spacers to your run until you fill it in. You gotta be careful as you get towards your end of your rail that you have enough room to slide in another picket, or else you could be in trouble when you go to put your last picket in. If you don't leave yourself enough space to get it in at an angle, you're gonna have to start taking picket spacers off to make that happen. So be careful that you don't do that. I'm to the part where I need to figure out how many more pickets I need, if any, to get into this space. So if I measure over to my post, I'm 21 inches. And if I move into here, 21 inches is right here. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4 more pickets to finish this space. Seems like a lot. Another way to check it is go old school. I think I need 1 more picket in here. So just put a spacer in between, don't lock them in, just put them in there. So I need 1 more picket to finish this run. So the reason I want to do that before I lock them in is because I need to be able to get this in on an angle. So I can barely get this last picket in here. But if I had all these locked in, I would have never been able to get it in. Now that I know I have the right amount of pickets in, I can finish my spacers for this side. All right, so now all of our pickets are in, all of our picket spaces are in, except for the very end ones. And what I've done is I've spaced everything out. It's nice and plumb. So now I'm just gonna take my measurements on top and bottom, make sure they're similar, and then I'll go cut those spacers, install those, and then we're done. Okay, so I have my picket spacers and I'm ready to cut them down. I have attached it to a scrap piece of bottom rail. It's the safest way to cut these to length, to keep your fingers away from the blade of the saw. I have my mark, I'm keeping this piece. So I'm gonna cut this off, and then I'm gonna do that 3 more times after this one, and then we'll go up and fit them and see if that section of rail fits out or not. I have 1 picket spacer that's longer than the other 3, so I just put a quick mark on the back side of it just to remind myself which one, even though I could sit here and go, okay, which one's longer, I just wrote it on there. Something I do frequently when I'm cutting lots of parts and pieces. Okay, I have my picket spacers cut. I'm gonna slap them in right now. Hopefully they fit like they're supposed to. All right, guys, and that is how you do a 5-foot high privacy wall in Regal Ideas pool wall products. So thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to click that subscribe button and hit that bell icon. Like and comment down below. Thanks for watching, have a great day.